So I woke up this morning and I had this Bible study that the Lord had me do a few years ago on my mind. And the Lord has been revealing things to me as far as what's to come um, for our world, for our country. And it just brought all of this back to me. And I wanted to share it with you guys, what the Lord shared with me, what the Lord had revealed to me. And so I'm just going to go with you guys. I'm going to go through it with you guys on what the Lord had gave me. And basically at the time when I did the Bible study, the Lord wanted me to go through and um and write down how each plague affected the Israelites, right? And as I went through it, I realized that the plagues ended up benefiting the Israelites, right? And so I want to share that with you guys. I'm going to make this as quick as I possibly can because you have things to do and so do I, right? And so, real quick, at the beginning of Exodus, we find that the Israelites are enslaved by the Egyptians, right? The Lord has raised up Moses and sent them to the Israelites to deliver them from the hand of Pharaoh. In the process of doing that, he um, he sends 10 plagues to Pharaoh or to the land of Egypt. Um, and that's not just to deliver his people, but also to mock the gods of Egypt, right? And so I'm going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to go down each plague and then let you know how it ended up benefiting the Israelites. Before I do that, though, I do want to give this, um, like, little thing. Um, when Moses goes to Pharaoh the very first time to say, hey, let my people go, right? Pharaoh basically is like, what did you just ask me? Like he's basically like, this request is so ridiculous. You could have only made it because you guys have too much time on your hands. You guys have too much time to rest. And so, what I'm going to do to deter you from coming back and playing in my face, I'm going to give you guys more work. And so ultimately, he removes whatever rest period the Israelites had before they had to go out and do work for him to build his cities and things. He takes that away, right? And that's very pivotal as we go through these plagues because that's something that the Lord is like, it's one of the main things that the Lord gives the Israelites. I also want to state this too, that when Moses went to Pharaoh the first time and he did that, right? And Pharaoh was like I'm taking away y'all's rest. The people of the Israelites, they rejected Moses. And this is very crucial, especially for the first three plagues, because the Bible says in Psalms 105:15, it says, touch not my anointed ones and do my prophets no harm. When they rejected Moses, they did a harm to him because they're not just rejecting Moses, they're also rejecting God because that's who the Lord sent to deliver them. That's who the Lord is speaking through. That's who the Lord is doing his works through. And so, the very first three plagues, again, when the Lord brings them, it also affects the Israelites. They benefit, but it affects them. And that's also because the principle, which I just stated in Psalms 105:15, is a principle that's still effective today. That means it was effective before then, before the time of Moses, and it's still effective after the time of Moses. And there's consequences to it. And the example that I have that the Lord gave me was with Abraham and Pharaoh. When Abraham lied to Pharaoh and was like, yeah, Sarah's my sister, and the Lord who had to go to Pharaoh don't even believe in Jehovah, right? But the Lord went to him and was like, listen, give that man his wife back. So my wrath and my anger isn't against you. You know what I'm saying? So it's very important for me to say that because the when you don't follow this principle, you will also feel some of the effects, some of the judgment, some of the consequences or rewards of not following that principle, right? So I wanted to lay that like groundwork down before we get started, right? And so we're going to get started now. And the very first plague that the Egyptians, not the Egyptians, that the land of, yes, the land of Egypt experiences is turning water to blood, right? And so all of the water from the rivers and the land in Egypt were affected. And it affected them for 7 days. I don't know if any of you have ever done, excuse me, a dry fast, but after about, they weren't necessarily dry fasting, but if you don't drink water for a couple of days, it becomes very difficult just for you to do very simple tasks. You know what I'm saying? And so just with this one, with the very first plague, what the Israelites experience is rest, which is the thing that I said before is that that arrow that Pharaoh wanted to take from them. Another thing he wanted to take from them, right? And so with plague number one, with turning the water into blood, they ain't got no water to drink. And so I don't know about you, but if I was a taskmaster, if I'm over the Israelites, I haven't drank water for 3, 4, 5 days. I don't have no energy to stand over you for you to do your job. So then that would alleviate the Israelites. They would be able to receive rest at that point, right? Plague number two is the plague of frogs. And so in this plague, all of the frogs come out of all the different bodies of water. They fill every inch of the land, all of it, right? In plague number two, the Israelites also experience rest because if every piece of land, if every inch of everything has a frog on it, it would be extremely difficult for you to do your job. And I don't know about you, but to experience such a nuisance, like to have, I don't like frogs, but all these frogs on me, I wouldn't be watching over the Israelites. Like I wouldn't be concerned about them. I'd be pressed about me. Another thing too is one that I'm gonna try to say this the best way that I can. Not like there's levels to slavery, but I would say that people experience like, okay, so like this. So like black people in America, and when they experienced slavery, right? They were house slaves and then they were field slaves, and they both experienced, they're both slavery, they're both bad. But in regards to, like, let's say for a house slave, you got the benefit of being inside and being in the shade and not being in the field. Yes, other things happen to you, but you know what I'm saying? And then um and so I said that to say there are probably within the Israelites, right? There are probably slaves who were much, that's what I was trying to say. There are probably slaves who were much worse off than other slaves. And so people eat frogs still today. It's actually considered a delicacy in some countries. So if you were a slave that was one of the worst off slaves, right? Like you had nothing, you didn't have a home, you didn't have cattle, you didn't have whatever. A land filled with frogs would give you food, it would give you nourishment. Also, it would be quite entertaining for the people of the Israelites, because after the frogs, right? Because God is funny. He mocks them in a very entertaining way, because first he gives them frogs, and then everything and then what the frogs would eat thereafter comes after the frogs. So he has the frogs, he kills the frogs, and then what they eat comes after them. There's no more frogs to eat them. And so that's entertaining. That would be entertaining to me. So that would be another benefit. It was just, anyways, moving on. Plague number three would be the plague of lice, which is the same thing. Lice just comes upon them, it's everywhere, and they would also experience rest. Now, plague number 4 is where it gets interesting, right? So for plague number 4 is where the Lord has now separated the land that the Israelites live in from the land which the Egyptians live in. So every plague after plague number 3 does not affect the Israelites. It only affects the Egyptians. And so plague number 4 is the plague of uh, the swarm of flies. And it's similar to that of the plague of lice, which is what frogs eat, and the plague of swarms. And to that, it covers the entire land, right? And it affects their crops. Where did I read that at? It ends up affecting their crops also. And it's also a at this point it's also a show of power, the not just to the Egyptians, but also to the Israelites. And so the Lord was like, he's like, you didn't believe me. So I had to let these other things affect you to show you that I am who I truly say that I am. You know what I'm saying? Like, I really am God. Like, I really do this. And so it's really a show of power, not just to the Egyptians, but also to the Israelites. Like, if you were just, if you didn't believe me before, now you definitely believe me, right? And so, from the fourth plague, we get rest and we get separation. So the Lord has now separated his people from not his people, from non-believers, right? And then plague number 5 is, and this when I remember when I first read it, this is when I was like, oh, wait, this doesn't make sense, right? And that's when I started really putting the pieces together. And this was um the disease of cattle, right? And in the Bible, it says that the grievous disease that he places upon the cattle, it kills all of the cattle. And so that dramatically affects the economy of the Egyptians. Because when you think of cattle, you might think of just cows. But cattle is also horses, it's also oxen, it's donkeys, it's camels, it's sheep. So it encompasses a lot of things. And then you have to take each one of those things and break it down. Like, if you have sheep, like if there's no sheep, you can't make more clothes, right? If there's no camels, you can't travel. If there's no horses, there's no chariots. If there's no oxen, there's no plowing of the farms. If there's no cows, there's no meat. And so the Lord at this point, he's really affecting the Egyptian economy, right? And he only affects them. He doesn't affect the cattle from the Israelites, right? And so what happens then at that point is, if I'm a merchant, right, and I got dealings to do in a different country, or I'm someone who likes to eat meat, or I'm someone who I need some new clothes, right? Whatever it may be, the the Egyptians at this point have to make a decision. Are they going to travel all these different miles by foot because they don't got no cattle to go to a different country to then buy more cattle, or are they going to go to this city where the Israelites live, where the Lord has preserved their animals, and just buy from them, right? And so the Lord really sets up the Israelites, and he actually starts to prosper them at this point. He actually starts to prosper them because the the Egyptians there, you're going to need things, right? You're going to need crops, you're going to need cattle, you're going to need things so that your economy can continue to run, right? So where would you get it from? Like, where would you get it, right? And at this point, the the Egyptians, they're basically they're either facing a famine or they're on the brink of famine, because the Lord has sent frogs, which has corrupted their land. He sent lice, he sent flies. That's all of that has affected their fields. It's affected their crops. And then now he's affecting um their animals, right? So he's affecting both their crops and their animals. He's already affected their water, although that didn't last for a very long time, right? And so if I'm an Egyptian and I don't got that many crops, at this point, I'm probably, because I don't know if Egyptians ate meat at this specific time in history, but if I didn't have much crops to survive on, and now if I did eat meat, I don't have much meat to survive on. I don't have the energy or the wherewithal to truthfully and honestly to go travel to another city to get those things. And so this really is kind of like my last resort, is to go to these people who I've enslaved and to ask them for what they do have, for the resources that they do have. Okay. And so then the following plague after that is boils. And the phrase that just came to my mind was it waxed them sore. And so if you're sick, like, you're not going to work, you're calling in sick, point blank, period. You're calling in sick. And so the Egyptians also get to experience rest, right? The following plague after that is thundering of hail and fire. With the thundering of hail and fire, it destroys whatever crops that have now just resprung up, whatever cattle that they have just now bought, right? And the Lord is real funny with this, because I remember reading that. I said, well, Lord, if you killed all the cattle from the previous plague, how did they get more cattle, right? Which we just went through, how they got more cattle. And the Lord said, oh, y'all got some more? It's done. And he then destroys all of their cattle, all of their crops again, right? Because it wasn't enough for him to do it the first time. He did it again. And then directly, so we go, so the same thing that they've experienced, the Israelites, the benefits that they've experienced from the previous um the previous plague with with the cattle, they'll experience those benefits again. And so now these people that have enslaved them, they have to go to them for resources. Then the following plague after that is locusts. Same thing. It even says in the Bible that whatever the hail didn't get, the locusts are about to get, right? And so now the locusts have come in, they ate up the rest of the crops. They and they affect, it says in the Bible that the locusts were grievous. They affect them so much, right? That the Israelites benefit by them having to again, the Egyptians have to go to the Israelites to get resources. And so now you're this Israelite, and you're enslaved, you ain't got much, but you got a donkey or a cow or this or that. And now people are coming to you because they need wool. Now people are coming to you, they need to make sacrifices to their gods. They need cows. They need donkeys. They need whatever it is that they need. They need to rent your horse so they can go to the next city and buy jewels or sell jewels, right? And so now this has happened a couple times as we've gone through them. So now my pocketbook is getting fat, right? Because I'm not being affected. I'm only benefiting from what's happening to these people in this land. The next plague after that is the plague of darkness. And it also says in the Bible that in the land that the Israelites live, they experience light. And so they are given rest, which is the thing that Pharaoh tried to take from them, right? And then we get to the final plague, which is the death of the firstborn. And the death of the firstborn is pretty obvious that um, they don't experience, uh, deaths in their part of Egypt, right? But it also says in the Bible that every single household experience in the, for the Egyptians, every single household experienced a death. There wasn't a household that didn't experience it, right? And so what that means is that um, whether if I just got married, right? Like me and my husband, we just got together. We're newlyweds. We don't have any children. One of us just passed away, right? It doesn't say that only people in certain, like in the first generation or the second generation was affected. I've even made sure I double check this, triple check this. It doesn't say that just sons pass or just daughters pass. It says that the Lord sent the destroyer, the angel of death, who would show them no mercy. The only thing that would spare you is the if the destroyer saw that blood. I am literally okay, sorry. I am looking at Exodus 12:12. I mean, I'm looking at the time and it says 12:12. And I know that means something, I think. Anyways, I'm going to keep going. Yo, Exodus 12:12 in the Bible says, I was looking at the time, it said 12:12. So I said, oh, let me go look to that in Exodus. It says, for I will pass through the land of Egypt this night and will smite all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both man and beast, against all the gods of Egypt. I will execute judgment. I am the Lord. I am the Lord. He did not care, right? And at this point, the Israelites really had to show if they were going to be obedient to his voice and what he in his instructions or not, right? Because when the destroyer came, when that specific angel came, it didn't matter if some Israelite, he was out working late, he didn't hear the instructions, he didn't do it. The angel was coming in and taking the firstborn of his um cattle and of his uh of his people, the people that live there. So this is when the Lord was like, listen, I don't care who you are. If you didn't follow my instructions, if you didn't hear what my prophet told you to do, I don't care. Judgment will be executed, right? Wow, there are no such things as coincidences in Christ. And so the fact that I was talking about this and this came up, anywho, moving on. And so there's that. That's the very first benefit, right? The very next benefit at this point is the Egyptians have gained favor in the eyes of, I mean, the Israelites have gained favor in the eyes of the Egyptians. And so the Egyptians, if I was an Egyptian, right, and I done went through all this stuff, I done put my cows, all my cows done died at least 2 to 3 times. Well, actually 3 times, because they just died when the angel passed by, right? And but even before this, like my cows didn't die, my crops have been affected, but these people are flourishing. If you know anything about investments, if I'm going to put my money somewhere, I'm going to put my money somewhere I know I'm going to get a return. So if I see so and so is growing, their whatever their investment is, it's growing, it's making them money, that's where I'm going to put my money. And so through this whole thing, right? It wasn't just like everyone woke up in the morning and all the Egyptians was like, "Ooh, we just love the Israelites today." No, the Egyptians were greedy. They saw that these people are benefiting they wanted to benefit too, especially after they've been through all these, months or years, because the Bible doesn't really specify. After they've just been through all of these plagues, these other people benefiting, they want to get in. They want to get in on what they see, right? And so they're like, yeah, you can take our gold. You can take what we have, right? You can take it because I know the Lord is blessing you. And so in turn, if I invest in you, you're going to bless me some way somehow. And so that's the so they get they don't have their households affected with death. They then get gold, right? But then the third benefit and the final and the greatest one is that it's finally at this point, right? Because the land has just experienced they've experienced famine, their economy has just crashed, they've experienced, you name it, they've just gone through it in the previous 9 plagues. But it isn't until that their population experiences a large decrease to this, like, a decrease of this magnitude, that Pharaoh is like, you know what, I don't think we can I don't think we can afford to lose anymore. And then Pharaoh is like, okay, I'm gonna let y'all go, right? And so they they benefit in those 3 ways in the final um in the final plague. I think I had kind of went, I did, because I was trying to make a point about, I kind of got sidetracked. I was trying to make a point about, um, I lost it again. That means the Lord don't want me to say it because I got it, I had it, and then I lost it. That means the Lord doesn't want me to say it. Um, but I just want to go through my notes really quick to make sure that I got everything. Um, I think I did. The only other point that I want to make is that the in the book of Genesis, what brings the Israelites to Egypt in the first place is that they were experiencing famine, right? So when Joseph, who is their brother or their kin, tells the Pharaoh of that time, right, that, what the Lord had told him in his dreams, he says there's going to be 7 years of plenty and then 7 years of famine, right? And I'm bringing this up to say this. I'm going to use the stock market as an example. If you follow the stock market in any way, you will know that we are in one of the longest bull runs ever. And it started right around, right around 2020, right? You would have seen, if you, especially if you just pull it up, you can just pull it up and you'll see like there's this major dip, especially, anyways, don't matter. There's this major dip, and then from there, it just skyrockets, right? And I wanted to do one of those, I can't remember the website I used to use, but you can extrapolate it out. You can just find one of those investments that takes you back in time, and you can pick a stock or uh, pick a. You can use the S&P 500. That's a really good one, the Standard and Poor. You put that in. Put in January 1st, 2020. Put in if you had invested that much amount, right? And extrapolate it out to today, and you will see that growth that you would have experienced, right? I said all that to say that in the Bible, before the plagues happened, there was 7 years of plenty, and then there were 7 years of famine. I'm not saying that we're going to experience 2 more years of plenty or anything. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that the numbers specifically have any like um, effect. You know what I'm saying? But what I'm saying is this. First, Egypt experienced years of plenty. Then they experienced years of famine. Then the people, because of the famine that they went through, so willingly gave themselves into slavery, right? And so I just want to tell you guys to be mindful, be leery, right? Do not allow your present circumstances, your present situations to to affect how you move forward. Because if you're not careful, because you're hungry for a famine that will end, you will willingly sell yourself into slavery, into bondage, into servitude. Don't do that. I also want to point out that the Lord is saying, when this judgment comes, right, his people will experience blessings and benefits. They will be judged first, too. It won't be to the great magnitude that non believers will face, or that the people who have mocked God, or what the people who have created these idols and these altars to these false gods, just like the Egyptians did, right? But you will experience something, and then you will benefit, right? It's going to be hard times, it's going to be tough times, but there will be opportunities. And if you are obedient to the Lord, if you follow his instructions, if you follow his instructions, when we get to the end of it, right? When we get to the end of it, you'll be much better off than when we started. But you got to stay tapped in. You got to lock in. But you have to stay connected to him, right? He has to be your source, right? Don't just be following other people willy-nilly. Listen to God. Follow his instructions. Be obedient to him. Be obedient to him. Yes? Okay. That is all that I have. I hope that you guys have a great day. Bye.